I'm a trans athlete. Of course, I know that I have biological competitive advantages which can never be overcome by hormones or surgeries.
I swear there's playing with their stick and balls joke in there somewhere, but more importantly, is this where we're at? I find it interesting, and I'm a little bit excited. I mean, have people finally woken up? UN officials call for female-only sports categories after women athletes lose 890 medals to trans opponents. 600 female athletes across 29 different sports. Listen, we have covered the trans women in sports debate for about like 5 or 6, 7 years now. And within that time, we've seen biological women in all categories, ranging from high school up to professional and Olympic athletes. We've seen women lose scholarships, prize money, world records, even losing their safe spaces in the locker room. Bearded 6-foot-tall trans athlete who knocked down rival during school basketball game was suspended from the female rowing team for leering at topless girls in changing room. Apparently this person said, "Ooh, titties." Really, bitch? Back in my day, you get bitch slapped a ton by other dudes for saying something like that to a woman. Just saying. Destroying entire seasons of women's sports. This Australian women's football team had 5 trans women and they went undefeated. We've seen women literally getting brain damage because they had to compete against male athletes. Women have had injuries that otherwise could have been avoided. And my question now is, has this all finally brought us to a tipping point? Here's what college students at the University of Central Florida had to say about this. Protect women's spaces or allow males to play in female sports?
Protect women's spaces.
Protect women's spaces.
Protect women's spaces.
Protect women's spaces.
Like dominate a little bit in the sports, and it would be kind of unfair.
I mean, we've seen that happen over and over again. Protect women's spaces or allow males to compete in women's sports?
That's what this is?
No, it's not the only one. What was the problem with that question? I mean, do people play with bodies or do they play with identities?
Bodies.
That's simple, right? It's that simple. Even certain trans women are being more honest than ever before about this all. About their unfair advantages, about what issues will arise because of them competing in women's sports.
Targeting you if you do well, as having unfair advantage. I slow myself down.
Luckily enough, I actually came across this ex-pro women's trans woman golfer who makes a bunch of TikToks about this exact topic.
Hey guys, so I'm at the driving range proving what I said, that I can still drive it further than any woman on the LPGA tour, which is why trans women belong in men's sports, period. About 295.
I loved what she had to say in so many of her videos. I invited her on.
My name is Nicole Powers.
You're a trans woman. You refuse to compete in female sports.
Yep. I'm a trans athlete. Of course I don't play in women's sports. I'm a trans athlete. Of course I wouldn't take scholarships or accolades away from women.
My stance on this is if you are male and you have gone through male puberty, are still going through, the motions and still have testosterone mainly running through your body, you should not compete in female sports. I think it's different if a child transitions early.
If you are male, you belong in men's sports. If you are female, you belong in women's sports. But it doesn't matter to me if you've gone through puberty, if you have higher levels of estrogen than your female counterpart. It doesn't matter. If you are male, you don't belong in men's and women's sports.
For me, it's the testosterone level, because I know a lot of people say, oh, well, that person has a penis, they're going to have an advantage. Like, to me, that's not an advantage. Like I said, I was playing against boys when they were 9, 10, 11 years old. They didn't have an advantage of me because they had penises. For me, I noticed once the puberty hit, they started developing to be much larger, much faster, much quicker than any girl could ever even imagine.
Speed and strength. Not just solely because of hormones, but because of genetic advantages that men and males have over females, regardless of hormones. I'm a trans athlete. Of course, I know that I have biological competitive advantages, which can never be overcome by hormones or surgeries. Extended heart and lung capacities, the ability to develop more dense muscle mass. Going through a puberty, yeah, you're getting taller, you're able to develop that muscle mass faster. But even if you didn't go through that puberty, you can still develop that muscle mass better than your female counterparts, and you could have 0 levels of any hormones in you, but that muscle availability is still there. When you start blurring the lines between, okay, let's check hormones here. When did you start transitioning? Do you have, the LPGA used to have this qualification that in their gender guidelines that you needed to have bottom surgery in order to play in that league. I don't know if they removed that or not.
So you started hormones and your transition at 15?
I was in high school. The therapeutics and the procedure to go about transitioning as a child then was much more difficult because this was the late 2000s.
Right.
They hadn't been infiltrated by
The
the
gender ideology cult. And
yesterday I went out to the driving range. I haven't played golf in 3 years, and I'm still bombing drives over 300 yards, longest driving length by any woman, not only on the LPGA tour, but in the world. And I'm driving 15 yards further just casually. Even if there was a trans league, I would never compete in it because I understand that as a male, even though I'm a trans woman, my skills and abilities don't change just because I've decided to live as a different gender than the one I was born in.
I always thought if they got bodied in male sports, that's why they switched over. Is that not true?
I made this decision long before I heard about the Leah Thomas scandal. And
Mhm.
obviously, being a trans person sitting back and watching these gross, unfairness happen,
Mhm.
it's embarrassing for me.
Why people like you, me, Blair, Buck, Marcus, we all speak out because we actually give a shit about actual transsexual people, and this we realize that the transsexual people are different than the gender ideology.
I get a lot of messages from parents of daughters who are in athletics, and obviously overwhelmingly supportive and thankful, and saying like, glad that you're saying it because I can't say that. I feel like I can't say that either, but I'm still doing it. So I just learned that saying trans women don't belong in women's sports, according to TikTok, is considered hate speech.
What do you have to say about the trans women who were in sports but left because they had the realization that as bio men they have obvious advantages?
Yeah, I played professional women's golf. I did up until 2019, and then I started having these realizations because I was standing on the tee box purposefully laying off all of my shots because I didn't want to sound off alarms. When I was playing women's professional golf, I knew as a trans athlete I was in the wrong place. And that's because I couldn't perform to my full athletic potential because I was needing to lay off on my game as to not sound off any alarms to female athletes I was competing with. And that's not what sports, especially at the professional level, are for. Yeah, so I get in my car and I'm like, maybe this is just me wanting to be accepted here more than me actually wanting to compete. Stop using women as a validity tool for your own existence. Like, the reason we're seeing trans women in women's sports is that they're using women's sports as a tool to make themselves feel more valid. And I'm not going to lie and say that I've never done that before because I have. And a lot of people continue to point that out. I played in women's sports. I played in professional women's sports. But I woke up. It seems like the natural progression in a trans woman's life, at least, is like, okay, I feel comfortable enough to go in a women's restroom. Let me check that off. I get to now do that. And now I get to play in women's sports. Now I get to do this. No, stop using these spaces, these female spaces and women's spaces for your own acceptance. And it's a hard pill to swallow. Inside, you're like, well, I've done all this stuff and I feel pretty and I feel accepted in my community. Why can't I? It's tough to swallow. But when you do, and you realize that, you can still be yourself, you understand that this is the right thing to do.
So here's where we're at now with all of this. Women and girls are finally standing up for themselves, forfeiting matches if they are forced to play against male opponents. We're seeing this across the United States, in Boise, Idaho, at San Jose University. This one was in Massachusetts. This one is from the University of Reno in Nevada. We're also seeing potential law rewrites being struck down in certain states. Riley Gaines posted on X, great news, Biden's illegal rewrite of Title IX won't go into effect in Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, and Indiana. A federal court granted an injunction for the Title IX lawsuit, followed by mentioned states. This is a huge win. The gender ideology house of cards is falling fast. We see school boards even switching up their policies.
The list goes on, but this is exactly why we need to protect women's sports, to give them a fair advantage against each other, because as you can see, the statistics, the timing, the distance, and the weight alone are staggering.
This specific school board voted 8-1 in favor of protecting girls in sports.
Next, approval, move to table for first read to retire school board policy 123.3. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Reynolds and seconded by Mrs. Gibson. Any comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Any abstentions? Motion passes.
And there is a new athletic company that stands up for women's protections and rights in sports.
We deserve our own sports, privacy, fairness, safety. We deserve a chance to compete and win. So don't be nice. Don't be careful. Be honest. Be brave. Fight for women. We've come too far to give up now. And if you agree with that, stand up and stand with us.
And the UN is even following suit. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, UN officials call for female-only sports categories after women lose 890 medals to trans opponents. It says female athletes have also sustained serious injuries such as knocked out teeth, concussions, broken legs, skull fractures from their transgender opponents. We know which one the skull fracture is from. That was from the transgender boxer. The report was presented to the UN General Assembly on October 8th, which included a plethora of written and in-person evidence. She advised that there needs to be a protected female-only category to ensure the safety of female athletes and fairness at all levels. So this is where we are currently. I do think that we're going to continue on this trajectory, hopefully. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, though. Be sure to go and follow me over on TikTok and go and follow Nicole. I think she's awesome. I think she makes a lot of sense, and she deserves more followers for standing up for women and girls and their protections. Both of our links are in the description below, and other than that, I will see you guys back here on this channel on Sunday with a brand new video. Until then, I love you. Keep calling out the bullshit. Bye.